Welcome, everyone. Excited to have you all here today. Going to give you all a minute or two to settle in, grab your cup of coffee, get comfortable as we introduce our October Change Series webinar, part 3, Moving the Needle on Strategic Alignment, Activating Change Champions for Effective Communications and Adoption. Just before we settle in and welcome our expert guest today, Silvia, if you can all let us know where you're dialing in from. It'd be great to get a sense of different locations that we're being joined from today. I'm going to start. Wow, that was fast. Amsterdam, London, Hampshire, UK, South Wales, Southampton, Budapest, Iowa, the Cotswolds, beautiful. Toronto, Sunderland, Boston, the Bay Area. My gosh, we are very transatlantic today. New Jersey, fab. South Africa, New York, Virginia, fantastic. Switzerland, Canada, fantastic. Welcome. A huge, huge welcome to everybody today. Okay, so we're very excited to bring this Change Series episode to you today. I want to very quickly introduce our leading guest. But before I do, just want to give everybody a context on Poppulo. Poppulo is the global communications for employee communications globally. We reach 50 million employees through our communications platform every single day. And our customers have coined a really cool phrase for how we drive value into their organizations at scale. They call it the Poppulo effect. They're coining it a game-changing model that has transformed how their organizations connect and drive change. Enable our customers to do this by seamlessly integrating data, governance, and insights. And what that delivers is personalization in a context-rich messaging framework at scale. So reaching the right person at the right time with the right message. And the result of that, unmatched speed in driving engagement and action, and accelerating your organizations and your ability to adopt, respond, and lead. So no other solution can match this level of precision and impact. So we are delivering essentially competitive edge into our 1,200 customers globally today. And on that note, I want to introduce our fantastic guest, Silvia. Silvia Cambie goes back a long way with Poppulo, over a decade, and has a really, really strong voice of reason when we're looking to do innovation around change and transformation. Silvia is a digital transformation practitioner, a thought leader in innovation, passionate about change management, and people's roles in technology adoption. And throughout her career, Silvia has worked for tech companies like Wipro and IBM. And in IBM, she used to focus on the application of Watson's AI, so in the work space. So very, very expert and experienced practitioner in the space of AI since Watson's days. And she's consulted with organizations and sectors ranging from manufacturing to banking, retail, and professional services across the UK, continental Europe, US, and the Middle East. And a former business journalist. So Silvia also has a great background in corporate comms and is recognized public speaker and presenter. So massive welcome to you today, Silvia.
Thank you, Caroline. Great to be here, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, we do go back a long time, Caroline, since the early days on enterprise social networking, right? So we have seen a lot of things unfold in the tech space, in the innovation space, in the comm space. So really looking forward to discussing those today.
Fantastic. Yeah, so in today's session, we're going to zoom in on how sustainable change can be achieved through the effective identification, mobilization, activation, and empowerment of change champions in organizations. And like combined, we're going to offer some practical tips for overcoming resistance or turning skeptics into active participants, plus discuss techniques for effectively communicating complex change in organizations. And please use the chat. This is live. We are excited to hear your comments, your suggestions, learnings, to make this a very, very dynamic conversation. So I'm excited to get you involved in the conversation. So please don't be slow to let us know. And Silvia is mad for our Poppulo socks. They're on the way to her in the post, and our Poppulo drinking bottles for hot and cold. First person to share a comment or a question, these are on the way to you. Okay, so make it a bit fun. Okay, so look, just kicking off, Silvia, would really love to understand like what exactly are change champions, and why do they play such a critical role in both everyday organizational change and larger digital transformation programs?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. So as if you've worked for a while in comms, so change management, you'll know that change champions are defined as employees who navigate and implement the change, right? And they are a very traditional bread and butter component of change strategies. So they can be used for technology rollouts, for comms rollouts in mergers or divestitures. They can be part of a comms cascade, or they can be part of a train the trainer strategy and be used for an L&D initiative. So we have all worked with change managers over the years, and we have always known that they are important, but now they're becoming even more crucial. And why is that? So I think it's got a lot to do with the pace of innovation, and in particular with the implementation of technologies like AI and generative artificial intelligence. So take, for instance, a Gallup poll that was recently released. According to that, 93% of Fortune 500 CHROs are implementing AI. But only 33% of the employees of those organizations know about the fact that their organizations are using AI. So there is a huge disconnect. And I think there is another change the change trend that is happening, which I'm seeing in my work at the moment. So if you've ever rolled out Agile in an organization, you know that there is a lot of lip service from the top, but it's very, very hard. So it's very hard because leaders have problems trying to understand what that does to the business model, to the bottom line. So you do need to mobilize voices on the ground to feedback to leaders. And I'm seeing that at the moment with a project that's exactly what needs to happen. And the champions are a great conduit for those voices. So to give you an example of how, I've used voices in the past, voices, collected by champions. So I was working on the rollout of a system for a retail company, and we were introducing mobile devices in their stores. They had a very large number of stores, mostly groceries and, sort of core retail. And the employees were incredibly excited because those mobile devices would help them. We're going to help them to spend more time with the customer, talk to the customer, and rather than being stuck in the back of the shop filling out forms. So we got those voices to come for the forefront through the champions and fed back to the leaders. So I think that, at the moment, the pace of innovation coupled with the fact that we need to convince leaders, really, these two factors tell us that we need to leverage champions more.
Wow. Okay. And like, I know there's interesting facts. I mean, Innovisors speak about the 3% rule, Sylvia, excuse me, around, 3% of your catalyst change agents actually move 90% of your audience potentially. And I know we spoke briefly about co-chairs, to your point about, modelizing voices on the ground. Potentially the executive sponsor is not the right person to be driving the message. It's those people who've been identified as the change agents or the change champions. And what we have seen in the past, and what we're seeing being used a lot more in the last 12 months, is using data to A/B split test how executive messaging around change is being engaged with versus a change agent catalyst, a face of go-to-market, a face of more frontline aspect of the business, and seeing how those messages are traveling engagement over time. And what we've seen across four exceptionally large transformation projects is the face of the business is winning every time. So if you're a customer at Poppulo, you have advanced analytics and you want to better understand how our organizations are using this, get in touch if you're not doing this today. But a huge opportunity to change the face of change, right? I think is essentially a message there. You touched on some interesting parts of the key characteristics, but when you're looking to identify potential change champions within an organization, like what are those key characteristics, Silvia?
Yeah, so I've got my own recipe. So if change champions, the identifying change champions is usually an activity that is a byproduct of stakeholder analysis and stakeholder mapping, right? So you do your stakeholder mapping and you kind of carve out your champion structure. And so your organization might already have your set of criteria, which are, champions have to be respected by peers, good listeners, good at understanding the business, focused on outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, so these are all valid points, but over the years, I have kind of, developed my secret sauce. And that is so for me, it's very important that they have a network, right? That they can reach deep in their part of the organization, being a business unit, a BU, a function. So that network is paramount. Passionate about the change, okay, that sounds like a given, but the change not only today, also in the future. So to understand what truly the transformation is going to do to the business in the future, right? So, they'll be closer to the customer. The customer experience will change and will become, will become a leading example on the market. So to be able to picture that vision in their mind and be collegial and collaborative, no big egos. I don't think big egos make good champions in my experience. Good communication skills, but obviously also good storytelling skills. So what we were talking about today earlier was the fact that we need to use storytelling to collate those voices from the ground for leaders. So storytelling skills and the ability to speak to leaders, not, being comfortable talking in front of leaders is a very important characteristic. And then also, I think this is kind of a byproduct of what I just mentioned, is the ability to inspire colleagues, and particularly colleagues that are jaded in parts of organizations where, I know you're going to show a slide in a minute, where there is a lot of change fatigue, and there's more and more change fatigue because, also this year has been a particularly difficult one for business, for tech, for, a number of reasons in the market. So this has been my secret sauce over the years, and yeah, so that's what I apply in my work.
It's fascinating. And I think what you just mentioned there is the storytelling skills, which are changing as new generations and multi-generational factors are playing into the storytelling and how stories are told and what are the methods, what are the channels, and what the content types are that resonate with different people. I mean, I think this fascinating study by Gartner recently, sharing that back in 2016, the average number of change transformation programs that were rolled out in organizations of like 5,000 plus employees, they average about 2 a year. And that's increased in 22 to 10. 10 significant change transformations been rolled through organizations. And the really striking thing is the fact that the willingness to lean in to lean into these changes. People are getting exhausted to your point, and the willingness to really tie and commit themselves has dropped significantly. And Gartner referred to this as the transformation deficit. It's that middle part. It's that middle in the graph there, where they say this is a significant risk. And if you couple that with McKinsey research to share that, they reckon, 3 out of 4 change programs are now failing. It's significant risk, and it's the greatest opportunity for communicators. But, there's a capacity to what communicators can do. And, this is a great opportunity to start thinking about the multifaceted approach to change, from your identifying your change agents to mobilizing them in a digital way at scale, which is what Poppulo are doing for very large organizations today. And it's the overlap of those two. Just on that point, how would you suggest organizations successfully mobilize the champions to create strong networks?
So I think, again, you have to look for hooks, right? And for particularly because, as you say, and as you've shown, the number of change initiatives and programs is increasing. And actually, at the moment, a lot of initiatives that weren't labeled as change in the past, like, for instance, a new performance review system, of performance review system, or other HR related initiatives, are all labeled as programs. So people are there is an increased anxiety around yet another change initiative that has to be rolled out, and we have to mobilize people. So we have kind of a very complex background that we are working against. And I would like to mention a study that I really like, and I read every year, and I use it to orient myself and orient myself in my work. So it's the Edelman Trust Barometer that comes out every year. I'm sure you guys know it, being in comms. So what is interesting is that 2/3 of the respondents this year said that innovation is poorly managed, and society is changing too quickly, and not in ways that benefit people like me, right? So Edelman is always looking at who does a person like me trust. So there is this anxiety around the pace of innovation, the ability to understand innovation, and whether, at the end of the day, innovation will benefit me as an employee, or as in my private life. And also another finding is that people view a person like me, so an employee, a neighbor, a peer, like at the same level as a scientist and as an expert, in terms of whom they can ask to get the truth about innovation, and how fast technology is progressing, and how they can get their heads around technology. So that peer-to-peer dynamic has become very important. And I think this is a background that we have to keep in mind when we want to mobilize our champions. So how do we mobilize champions? So we have, as I said before, champions networks are usually created as a byproduct of stakeholder mapping and stakeholder analysis. And that is the part of the work that I would call desk research. I look at, you need to do some field research on top of that. You need to talk to change managers on other programs. You have to talk to program managers. You have to talk to internal comms and see who is doing what and how they are leveraging change managers, because you change champions and change managers, because you need to be able to capitalize on their work. And also be careful with labels. So in the past, I often spoke and work with clients who were telling me, well, we don't use change champions. That's not, you know, a technique we've used in the past. But it was just because they had other labels like adoption lead or train the trainer. So you might have a skeleton of a structure, of a champion structure that you can tap into. So always do your field research. So in terms of hooks that you can use to motivate champions, and to enroll them into, you know, your change work, I think at the moment innovation is a big one, because I think that, you know, employees know that technology is going to change their role, that they will have to reskill, you know, because of AI, but because of other systems. And so being a champion on a program, it's kind of like, you know, you just get an edge. It's just, you get an intro to what is coming up, and you can, you know, find out how to prepare for that and how to reskill, upskill. I also, over the years, I think that I've always used the fact that, you know, particularly in companies where there is a lot of change fatigue, people still need, they're looking for a sense of belonging, right? A sense of belonging to an initiative. So you have to promote a feeling of meaningfulness around your change champion program. You have to give change champions an autonomy or the opportunity, for instance, to co-design the change resources, the change collateral, use design thinking, use other techniques, because they need to have ownership in their process and really feel part of it. So that is another hook that I have been using over the years. So it's you remember we used to say in the past, comms is done with the employee, not to the employee. At the moment, it's like change is done with the champion, not to the champion. So also another factor that I think is quite important, and I know it's difficult in organizations sometimes, is try to make the champion role and change champion structures more official, like, you know, encourage employees to mention the fact that they are change champions, mention it in their performance review, so that you know, has a certain recognition, or encourage managers, line managers, to build that into their career development going forward. So just give it an aura of, you know, something that is more official than just volunteering and doing something on top of your day job.
And added what's in it for me. We have a lot of questions actually.
Yeah.
So let's pause and get some in. And before we do, just a quick poll there for everyone. So I think it's going to launch in here now any second. So yeah, our customers at Poppulo, they achieve about a 30% improvement in change comms, reach and connection through that Poppulo effect I mentioned that was coined by our customers. If you'd like to speak to a solution specialist, if you're a customer or a non-customer, to find out how that's achieved, just click there and we will organize that for you. So if you want to see how organizations from 5,000 up to 400,000 are doing this at scale, just get in touch and we'll share the magic sauce with you. Okay, Marie Ball, excuse me, has asked a very good question. So any recommendations on how to navigate the need for change comms agents when there isn't a robust change management support? Like, there's no change manager identified, but yet folks are still looking for comms. And, you know, I assume the change management team helps to identify the champions. So any recommendation how to support that through comms, but without a robust change management framework, that would be super helpful. I know you've identified some areas, or you covered some of that, Silvia, but anything else? That's a really great question. I love that idea about making it more of an aura and an official element. But anything else that you can, this is for quite a significant, large organization. Maria's the second question here I'll ask, but anything else to add there? You don't have an official framework or official team for change management. How do you navigate and identify these change champs?
So I think that that's often the case, more often than we think. And sometimes, I had an example. I was working with a company where they had a change management office, but it was very embryonic and they were starting off, so they had no structure whatsoever. So what I did is I worked with IT, and I worked with IT trainers that, they basically what they would call loosely adoption leads. So these were guys, for instance, this company, it was a CPG company. They had factories in different parts of the world. And in these factories, they had people who, were helping to roll out technology, and were doing training, but also we're leading small interactive trainings online. So I got a list of those, and I basically interviewed them and tried to find out whether they would be suitable for the change champion role, and whether they would be interested. And many of them were very passionate, because they had already invested so much time in this, activity that was on top of their day job, that they wanted to continue that. That was part of their identity, right? And so I think, in my experience, even when there are no change champion structures, and it's more often the case than you would think, there is something that might be, embryonic, but that you can build on that. And so, an example is, maybe, people who've done the training or they helped with adoption of different programs.
Thank you. I'm going to join a second question from Marie with a question from Neil Harrison, if you don't mind. And your AI background and expertise will play an interesting part in this answer, I'm sure. Marie's asking, any advice on how to effectively manage a change agent network within a very large organization, 175,000 employees plus, that is handling multiple change projects simultaneously. You're trying to ensure consistency, engagement, and alignment across teams and initiatives without overwhelming the change agents and the change communicators. So that's an interesting one. So you have a ton of change going on. You have a great network, but you're trying to ensure that you don't overstimulate or over-index and exhaust it. And how do you keep that consistency engagement around the agents and the communicators? And then if you kind of map on Neil's question, which is really interesting, given the pace of AI development, there's an increasing demand for continuous or iterative change. What role can change champions provide in these environments? So it's what Neil is talking to, is that innovation, and this pace of change that I didn't think we thought could get any faster, but it has. How do you make sure that we don't overwhelm and exhaust a network, a change agent network?
So well, thank you for those questions, Marie and Neil. I'll start with Neil's question, and then sort of might lead on to Marie's. So I think that there is, change around AI is a complex one, because in my experience, a lot of AI projects going on in companies, they're not connected. There are a lot of sandboxes and POCs happening in different parts of the company, but they're not joined up. So that adds, a certain level of complexity to AI change. So I think but that also means that change champions have an even more important role in identifying what is going on in their part of the company in terms of AI. So to give you an example, what a company I'm working with has done is create a center of excellence for AI in terms of, getting all the people who are working on POCs together to exchange best practice, to share resources. And so that is from a technology point of view, but that center of excellence also has a change function. Like, we used to have a transformation office in the past that would manage the transformation. And in this case, the change agents would report on what is going on in their parts of the business in terms of AI from the point of view of informing the rest of the organization, but also trying to relate what the employees in their parts of the business need in order to understand what's going on. So, in order to understand what a particular POC is all about. So, for instance, in oil and gas, if you take an offshore asset and you have the documentation that is mostly paper-based and you digitalize that and you use AI to get in predictive analytics, you need everybody in that part of the organization to understand what it needs for them in order of, for them to be able to query those documents, but also what it means for health and safety. So those change agents, as part of the COE, not only report what is going on in their parts of the organization, but also need to tell the organization what the employees need in order to understand how that AI impacts the business.
Wow. And just a note on back to on Marie and like ensuring there's consistency, engagement, alignment, but ensuring that you're trying not to exhaust your network. There's really smart, and Marie, sorry, I'm not sure if you're part of an organization that uses Poppulo, but get in touch and we'll share with you how we do enable organizations to do this at scale. The ability to create hugely dynamic content that's hyper-personalized. So essentially allowing communications teams to create scalable programs that are hyper-personalized in terms of the content for the right champion to reach the right audiences, to build those networks. That's part of the Poppulo effect as well. So we can show you if you're a customer, or if you're not getting in touch, we will show you how you can do that at scale digitally. And I actually had a quick question for everyone else. Okay, Marie, we can sort that out for you. Delighted that you're a Poppulo customer. I'm wondering how many organizations on this call or teams on this call use organizational network analysis to identify champions. This is a really, it's a quite a long-standing framework of insight, Silvia, but it's so insightful. So just getting a bit of a hand raise, we do, we don't, just to get a sense. But we've worked on some incredibly large projects where we've worked with transformation and IT to identify organization network analysis. So for instance, it shows and identifies who are those 3%. So it's a very interesting opportunity. And again, there's an easy way to do it with at scale, but to really identify those agents that make the change, ONA, it's a very, very progressive way to do this at scale, to find and source and surface those champions. I have one question.
Maybe I'll answer quickly Marie's question about complexity and overwhelming. So I don't know if you have a change management office in your organization. If you do, that helps, because that's like a kind of a control tower for everything that is going on in your organization in terms of change. But I have found that in the past, in order not to overwhelm champions, the best thing is to use techniques like agile change, i.e. to empower champions to create their own artifacts. Maybe, agile artifacts that are much faster to create and on the point. So you just basically open it up for them to use their own resources. And it is a bit of a new process, but definitely that kind of relaxes the pressure of so much coming from the top, and maybe even stuff you don't need, because the top doesn't always know what you need on the ground. So we find that having that much more collaborative relationship with the champions and empowering them to create and co-create helps to release the pressure and deal with that complexity.
Fantastic.
I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely does. And we're seeing a lot of our more informal change content and campaigns from change agents been shared through feeds into teams, meeting teams where they're at. So there's a huge adoption on feeds into SharePoint and feeds into Teams, enabling that voice of the change agent into the right communities. Meeting the employees where they're at. One more question here, and I think it's important. It is the most important one to a degree. After, how do you surface, how do you engage, and how do you amplify change agent networks? What are the metrics, Silvia, we need to be considering, like the KPIs that organizations use today to measure the impact and the success of their change networks? Like, how have you seen that evolving, and what should we be looking out for?
Yeah, this is a bit of a controversial one, because it's like change is considered a bit soft sometimes, so that they're we don't always think about metrics until a project is concluded. So coming from comms, my original background is in corporate comms, so I kind of have my own slant on it, and so often progress of adoption is a key metric, but we have to think about what adoption means. And I have a great book to recommend, which is called The Technology Fallacy, and it's has been published by the MIT Press. And so they give a definition of adoption, and they say this adoption describes the gap between the rate at which technology changes and the rate at which individuals make those changes as part of their daily lives. So it's just that gap that we need to measure, and we need to measure how people are coming along thanks to our change champions and their work and initiatives. So, I'm sure we've all been there in terms of measuring what is the impact of different change champions initiatives. So, for instance, the number of people who attended a town hall, who took the training, how many trained the trainers, how have they, evolved during the course of the project. Or for instance, simple things like how many people have logged into a system that we are rolling out since an event organized by the champions, for instance, an all hands workshop. And so you measure all this different phenomena, and you have data like obviously Poppulo, but you might have Power BI. So you kind of bring that data to the forefront, but I think that data has to be used, and it's only powerful if we use it to tell a story and develop a narrative, right? A narrative that we have to feed back to leaders, right? So the data is not a spreadsheet, and it's not an end in itself. It has to be used as a story that justifies what we do, helps the user, but also helps the leader understand what's going on the ground when the rubber meets the road. So to give you an example, I was working on a project that we were rolling out a dashboard that was monitoring consumer data. So we got the champions to ask questions like, to ask users questions like, as a frequent user of the dashboard, what are you finding most useful? How are you incorporating the dashboard into your work? Are you doing anything differently from what you were doing before? Does the consumer data help you with your decision making? So, a lot of questions that are qualitative and not just quantitative, because we needed those to tell that story, and we needed to tell that story and build a narrative that we would relate back to our leaders, so that we would get support for the program, and also we would justify the work that the champions have been doing. So I think it's kind of a dynamic that reinforces itself, right? Just don't think only about the quantitative data. Think about data that you can use to report back to the leaders, so that also, the champions feel proud because of the work they've done, and also the change people piece really lands in its entirety, and in its just the difference that it makes becomes very visible.
And we've seen that with Poppulo Advanced Analytics campaign data, and how that's applied into the storytelling and the executive reporting on large change over time. Like one organization, very, very large, has had a significant sustainability and very purposeful story that they were rolling out. And you expect, and you set, your guardrails, and you set your goals, and the organization did. And I think the reporting on the campaign surprised some people. Some operating countries, they flew through the funnel of awareness, familiarity, understanding, claim behavior. They did the pulses, they pulsed a baseline, they pulsed after 30 days. And some of the countries that they weren't expecting to dive in and connect with the story did. And they were able to identify some change agents in that audience to then tell the story in some of the lagging operating countries and departments. In the words of, to your point earlier, the voice of the business. So bringing somebody from an operating business, country, or department that have had significant results, been able to retell that story into those lagging countries. So you're catching up on ensuring that you're reaching those change awareness and understanding goals with your leadership. I mean, National Grid are great example of that, but there's many others who are doing this on a daily basis. It's just been really smart, to your point about how they use the data to tell the story, but more importantly, how they're using the data to bring the rest of the audience along and use resources in impactful ways. So if there's a country or a cohort that are really connecting to the change, okay, you could take your foot off the pedal when you're thinking about large scale communication, and apply resources back into those lagging areas, or those areas or cohorts that are lagging a little behind and connecting with the change story. I have just one more question. I thought there was a great one up here. I'm just after losing track. Sorry, there was another question. Sorry, one second here. It was essentially a question, and maybe I'm getting them from three sources now, so apologies. How, if there's a change champion that's a little bit skeptical of the change, or there's a change network that's a little skeptical of the change, how do you bring them around?
So I hope it's not the entire network that is skeptical, because then there is a bigger problem there. But I think in general, champions that are skeptical and jaded, it comes from change fatigue, and it comes mostly from the fact that they haven't been listened to in the past. Right. I think it always comes from that. I was working on a client this year, a manufacturing company, where they had a lot of change galore, and they had a lot of networks and change initiatives and workshops, but people were never, they lip service was paid. Voices were collected, but nothing, they wouldn't, none of their suggestions were ever incorporated. So you have to go back to the source of, of the problem, and you have to spend time interviewing people. So what I did when I found out that this part of the business that we were dealing with had a particular problem, I kind of interviewed a lot of them. A lot of them were very critical, also quite confrontational. So don't be afraid. That's just part of the process. And I then collated their stories and their interviews and played it back to them. So we also told them how we would present to the leaders what they had told us. And some of the points were quite strong. So there was a discussion about them, because obviously they didn't want those points to be fed back to the leaders, but we found a common ground, a middle ground. So I think you always have to go back to the source and spend time interviewing, talking to people in that particular network or area or business unit where the criticism is, people are skeptical or jaded. That's kind of work you need to do.
Excellent, fantastic. Any other questions there before I go into key takeaways from Silvia? Pat, I see your message. I'd love to connect with you one-to-one on this. We have a stakeholder connect solution that allows you to connect to external your external audience network, and let me read you into that a little bit more in direct messaging. Fascinating.
There was another question that Andrew had. How do you see AI being used to inspire employees/champions to actually impactful change?
Sorry, missed that.
Okay.
Andrew.
Yeah, no problem. So I think at the moment, what I see is that AI is being used as innovation and as an opportunity for the champions to upskill and to be ahead of the game, right? That is, how kind of the AI agenda is being sold to them, how we use AI to recruit champions. I think also there is another aspect, which is Gen AI around the creation of assets and collateral and how it can be used. And there is also, a piece of training that can be done. And again, that's helping champions being ahead of the game, because if you help them, use a particular piece of Gen AI, you train them in prompt engineering, so they will be able to create more powerful text, more powerful images, more powerful presentations. Then that's an extra skill that they gain just by the fact of being champions. So those are the different hooks, AI-related hooks that we are using at the moment. I'm sure there will be more coming up. So it's basically the innovation and reskilling, and it's the Gen AI creation piece. I hope it answers your question, Andrew.
Any nuances from a multi-generational aspect? The newer generation entering into the workforce, we're very corporate, potentially very formal in large businesses. How are they reacting to what's been asked of them, change? How are they going to be mobilized in a meaningful way? Is this going to be an added challenge, or is potentially the way in which newer generations are coming into the workforce, are they going to unlock this ability to amplify their perspective quite freely and informally? You're talking about creating your artifacts. I mean, I think no better generation than the generation stepping into our organizations right now to give it to you directly, to be able to create content that's quick, snappy, digestible, and quite visually appealing. Like, could this be a major step forward in change?
Yeah, that's a very complex question. And actually, I was reading an article from the Harvard Business Review recently that where you know, I learned that there are now 5 generations in the workforce. So baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Gen Z, and also Generation Alpha. That's what I didn't know. So those are people born between 2010 and 2024 who are now, you know, having like summer jobs or little internships. So this is a lot of different demographics to service. And I think, so the way I approach it, like, is for people who have been with companies for a longer period of time, or, you know, who are, you know, more senior, senior in terms of years, not a position. I think that there are different hooks that you can use for different demographics, in my experience. So for those more senior people, senior quote unquote, you can, they're usually quite proud of their network. They're proud of who they know in the company. You know, they've been around a number of years, they've worked in different countries. So I would use that hook. You know, you now have a great opportunity to really leverage your network, gain visibility, present at town halls, create content for a town hall, for instance. So for more, you know, junior constituencies that are joining the workforce, I think it's, in my experience, it's more complex. And I've been trying, you know, to kind of understand where the real hooks are. And I think it is, but again, that's based on my experience. And if somebody has a different take, I would love to hear from them. It's, a lot of more junior people are not interested in having a very long career, right? They're not expecting to be with a company for 25, 30 years. So they want to be able to navigate an organization quickly and be able to, you know, find out what is what and how they can get from the job they have now to the job they want to have, and quickly. So I think that that's the hook I have been using, plus visibility on top of that. And plus also, as you were saying, Caroline, the fact that they are using new technology and new techniques. So TikTok is not new, but is used in internal communications, for instance. So that is maybe an avenue. Or maybe in Gen AI, it's, you know, like new joiners are great in visual Gen AI. You know, they know the different AI apps that can be used for, you know, different types of visuals, different types of presentation. So to use that, to leverage that in order to kind of get them to work as champions, right? So you want to understand how the organization works. You want to understand quickly. Here is an opportunity. Help us. So you have to kind of play with the different constituencies you have. Obviously, it's also it's different from geography to geography. Also, sometimes from sector to sector. But in my experience, more from geography to geography. So I think that kind of blew my mind with the 5 generations that we now have as demographics, and that we have to engage and enroll as champions.
That's absolutely fascinating. Silvia, I'm going to come to you. Your 3 or 2 takeaways. I mean, I have a page of takeaways that we're going to share with everyone after this, but your 2 or 3 live takeaways on activating change champions for change success.
Yeah, so one that is quite close to my heart, because I know the difficulty of kind of engaging leaders at the moment, because it's been a very complex year on the market in different sectors. So the role of change champions is evolving. So don't think of them as just an instrument or an amplifier. Think of them as strategic players, right? And get champions to help leaders understand how the transformation story is unfolding, and most importantly, impacting the business and impacting the users. So that is a very important point. Another point is sort of slowing down to speeding up. take the time to do that co-creative piece with your champions and to empower them to do their, own initiatives, own collateral. Maybe Gen AI is going to help, certainly, so that, that pressure of that pyramid structure is not there anymore. It's a much more organic structure that you are putting in place. And I think another point is that, thinking back to that, those stats from the Edelman Trust Barometer, is that innovation anxiety is here to stay, right? It really is. And so change champions are going to become more important because, again, they are, a person like me, a peer. So think about, organizations ought to think about how to make the role more official, and find a space for that in performance management, in career development, because we need to get people on board with this fast innovation and the rollout of AI. We do need these people, but we also need to reward them and recognize them. So this third piece, I think, is also important. So I think those are my three main takeaways and thoughts.
Absolutely love the last one. I think it would really resonate with a huge amount of people, I'm sure, on this fireside chat today. The three takeaways that I think I can share from a Poppulo perspective, having worked on some of the largest transformations across our organizations over the last decade, is augment your experience meaningfully with dynamic content. Be really smart around the ways in which you can deliver hyper-personalized experiences at scale. If you don't feel like you've knocked this out of the park yet, get in touch with us. That's huge. This is the consumer experience been transferred into the workplace comms. So it's really, really big, and it's extremely powerful. We're knocking 30% improvement within 60 days in major change campaigns using this Poppulo effect. So that's a big, big one. So get in touch with us today around that. Be very present around Omni. Every channel has a real opportunity to reach different audiences at different times. So we're seeing the ability for our communicators and our customers to touch across multiple channels. That's 7 touch points to reach an employee is key, and making sure that you're meeting them where they're at. So that's a really, really key one. Being really considered around how you're measuring communications and applying campaigns to really track that evolution and understanding where you're getting ahead, surfacing some of those internal catalyst and change phases and co-chair phases and voices, and bringing them into markets and opportunities around cohorts that aren't as fast to connect with the change programs. Massive opportunity to drive change at pace around time to value for your executives. Telling that executive story, Silvia, I loved that. We see a lot of our customers are a little come to us and say, hey, I've got an interim meeting with our executive on this campaign. How am I going to tell the story around this data? We're not where we thought we'd be with our change, or we're well ahead, and we're afraid of getting even more. Marie's point of like more change comms being asked of us. It's how you balance and using data to tell a story, and I think the opportunity there to do more with data is still there, and we've really exciting releases coming into next year on that, so stay tuned on that. And the last part there is looking at it from the what's in it for me perspective. If we can be really mindful about ensuring that employees' preferences are taken into play, their behaviors, and the data is fed back into how we're going to shape a content experience for them, we will ensure together that we're driving an experience that's meaningful and purposeful for employees. And they'll connect, they'll collaborate, and they'll build communities around change that will help organizations arrive at their desired state faster. So just want to say a massive thank you. I know we have a ton of customers on our call today. You're fantastic to work with. Silvia, absolute pleasure as always to have you here. Be sure if you want to get in touch that you email myself or Christine
get in touch with us. We're only delighted to support you into the new year when you're looking ahead and you're doing your planning and you're thinking, what else, or how stop, start, continue. Get in touch. Let's have a brainstorm. So excited. So just a massive thank you again. Loved all your questions. And for Marie, who asked the first question, we've got all the gear coming your way. Let us know how many people in your team and your office location, and it's coming to an office near you soon. Massive thanks, everyone. Tune in November for our next webinar on AI in the workplace communications, specifically around auto translation, a new release in our business that is going live. So just tune in to hear more. So a massive thank you, Silvia, to all the team. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.